Hey guys, Andrew here today with my very first interview for the channel with Mike Coderre-Lalonde. We discuss his debut mixtape, most likely to drop a mixtape, and I am happy to share this interview with you. Now, before you get into it, I want to give you a forewarning. Towards around the 20-minute mark, the tail end of the interview, something was going on with my Blue Yeti microphone and caused a little bit of weird noise towards the end. I don't want this to discourage you to watch the interview. I think this is a great interview. I'm proud of the questions I asked Mike. I'm really happy with how this interview turned out. But I just want to give you guys a warning. Turn your volume down towards the tail end of the interview, around the 20-minute, 21-minute mark, because that weird noise, unfortunately, no matter what editing I did to this video, there was nothing I could really do. That's just a warning, disclaimer before you get into this interview. Otherwise, my only other thing I want to say is before you get into this interview, me and Mike briefly, a couple questions in, discuss drugs such as cocaine, alcohol. For anybody that is a recovering addict, please be warned. I do not want to trigger anything with that. I do not want to offend anybody. But I do think this interview is very important. Me and Mike get into some really good discussions throughout this interview. So if that's all good and you are all okay with those things to discuss that we have in this interview, please go ahead and continue enjoying this interview with Mike Coderre-Lalonde.
What's up, everybody? It's Andrew here, back again. We're doing something a little different here today. We're doing an interview, and what's this? I have Mike Coderre-Lalonde over here. We are going to be discussing your debut album, or is it mixtape? Which would you say it is? To
I
start.
would just say it's a mixtape,
Okay.
just to go with the name and everything.
You'd reached out to me on the 14th, and I'd straight up listened to it the next day. So I had a lot of questions for you on this because you most certainly, definitely throughout this whole thing, you have a lot of passion and your flow is really good throughout this thing. Time and time again, whenever people usually send me something, I'll be frankly honest with you, it kind of has mixed results. And some people, I see something there that they're really talented in. And honestly, I would say you definitely are one of the more talented people that has hit me up with music for sure.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Very kind.
Was this project something that like you started with wanting to make hip hop, or did it start with anything else to begin with? Just out of curiosity.
So like I've been rapping and like freestyling and things like that for a really long time, really long time, and this actually was not even the first project I was making in the progress of making when I came up with this concept. I'm kind of actually working on another project, and while making that, we kind of realized that we're gonna put it on hold to so we can gather more materials like videos and stuff like that. So in the meantime, I really wanted to drop something like quickly, and I wanted to drop something like on my birthday because that's when this was supposed to originally come out, September 5th. And so I write all the time constantly. So I had a bunch of these songs saved up, and I had like the leases which I purchased, and it was just a matter of finally getting it done and recorded, and then finally out.
All right. What events particularly inspired you to write this material for this mixtape? Because the common theme I noticed on this one is drug use and all the stuff that we'll get into in a little bit. But what inspired you to write this particular mixtape, most likely to drop a mixtape?
So, well, one that the biggest inspiration was in high school. I won most likely to drop a mixtape, and so that kind of plays with the theme of the cover. And basically, it was a matter of like I wanted to get something out. I've always been very particular. I really wanted the sound to be good, and so within that, the songs that I wrote, they're all written at kind of different points, different struggles, or I wanted to address certain things at the time. Like generally, a lot of these songs were written around the same time, but they're all like just different kind of moods that I was in when I wrote them. I kind of didn't really write every single one to be part of the mixtape. It was just kind of like once I wrote the songs and the songs were made, and I wanted to make this mixtape, I went through like a bunch of the songs that I had written, and I was like, well, which ones do I feel like in sequence tell like a mini story that have like a certain feeling that kind of match and that come together, and that's essentially how that came to be.
Okay. About how long do you think the production of this was from beginning to end on the exact spectrum?
That is a good question. In terms of recording, mixing, and everything, I want to say 2 months. It was 2 months and
Wow.
a lot of sessions in terms of like getting it recorded. So yeah, in terms of the writing, I want to say is in a 6 month period, maybe even a little bit longer. I write very quickly, but sometimes what I'll do is I'll write a song, I'll get to the hook, so I'll have a verse and a strong hook, and then I kind of meander a little bit, and I do other things, and I come back to it, write the second verse, and that kind of playful things.
Yeah, dude, I'm totally right with you there. I'm trying to work on my own shit, and I'll write something I think is amazing, and then I'll just like kind of like get lost somewhere, and then come back to it, get lost, come back to it. So yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. So the next one is going to be a heavier topic, and I'm just going to preference this. It I want to be considerate to people who could be considered recovering addict, and that can also be a side question I want to ask you as well. Um, drug use is, cocaine, alcohol. There's many things that could be considered a drug. This conversation we're going to get into could be triggering for those people. So I want to warn anybody before you continue watching at this point. If you want to back out now, this is your time to like back out of this discussion. But what I noticed when I listened to this on my first listen for sure and repeat listens was use of alcohol, cocaine, weed, all that kind of stuff was a theme throughout this album. You have a lot of passion behind this, I noticed for sure. Some passion that I've noticed that some artists don't always get right. And it feels like you got it correctly down where you portrayed it to be a reality of what was a part of your life. And I would like to know what pushed you to be so upfront and honest with your audience, because it's a very challenging thing to be upfront with your audience on that subject matter, especially music in general.
Basically, for me, with my writing, a lot of it just comes from dealing with pains and struggles, and I'm very direct. I don't tend to like to beat around the bush a lot of the time, like especially with songs like "I'm Fucked," where it's just like, here is like the pain, here is every single thing. I'm doing drugs because of this. This is the happiness that I'm faking, like lines like that, right? Like I'm very direct. I'm very honest. I felt one for myself. Like most importantly, it's for myself. Like the audience is obviously going to hear it and they're going to make connections or they're going to learn things about me, right? Even like a lot of my friends who will be listening to this album or did listen to the album when it first came out. But honestly, at the end of the day, it was just more for me. And the most effective way to deal with the pain for me was to be direct as humanly possible.
I just wanted to say, as somebody who has had struggles with alcohol abuse and stuff, it really made me feel like I wasn't the only one who went through that. And I really want to thank you personally for that, because when I listened to it, it really made me feel a lot better. But also, like, I felt your pain as well at the same time. I just thought you should know that.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And I'm glad it could even have that effect, right? That's as someone who creates, obviously I don't have a big audience, but that's what you hope for. Even just one person just feeling like even listened to or heard, like that is the dream, right? And so when it came to that music, that's kind of my kind of goal and ideals, right? Like obviously I have certain songs that may sound playful with the idea of drugs, but I always find no matter how much I write about drugs and stuff, I always come back to that, like, but is it okay? Is this a good thing? Is this feeling a good thing? And so I'm glad that message went across and you felt it, right?
Right. I personally think that I would love more people to hear this, because you really do have a lot of passion behind it. And I do feel like this project will mean a lot of things for a lot of people. And I really do hope you blow up at some point down the line, to be honest with you.
Well, thank you so much.
No problem, man. So moving on is to a next question I have is a much more productional question. I noticed the producer host, hope I'm saying that correctly, has 3 credits on your album. Was there anything particularly that attracted you to their sound or their music at all that you can think of?
So ironically, a lot of the producers that I did find, how I found them was I'm very big into synthwave, and that ironically I touched a little bit on it with the last song, Lessons, with that kind of 80s synthwave kind of vibe. And so it's something that I've been on for a while, and I have things in the works that plays more of that sound. So that was kind of the building block, and then that's how I got a hold of most of these producers, the Ghost, most importantly, right? And so I went through his production. I hear his other beats that obviously a little bit more hip hop, more trap based, and I love them. And it was one of those things where I bought them as quickly as possible because I wanted to have them, and I knew they were going to disappear quick. The better the beat, a lot of the times it disappears really quickly. And ironically, one of the main reasons why those 3 songs end up on the album logistically is because they were purchased. So some people have bought them. I still have my lease, and I still am able to put it on places like DistroKit that send it to like Apple and Amazon and everything like that. But I only have a certain time with them. So I thought I need to get these as quickly as possible out so that I'm able to kind of use the songs in any means possible. And the biggest part is too, is because he's the same producer, I find he has a sound of himself, right? So it cohesively and it feels cohesive amongst the songs that I do have of it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the last song was, I don't know if you're aware of this artist. It kind of sounded like something in the vein of like the Kid Loire. I'm not sure if you're aware of who that is.
I have heard a couple of his songs. Ironically, he's not the person I'd say inspired that song. But if it's one of those things that somebody like you say it kind of gave him that kind of vibe, I'd be like, 100%. I can see that immediately, right?
Right. And in no way am I saying you're copying them. I just thought that was something similar to it.
Yeah, no.
And to follow up on that particular last song, in the outro, you sing a lot about needing to grow up and change. Was there anything particular that inspired you to write that in that song?
Well, during this year, I've had a very big change. I'm completely open about it. I'm almost approaching a year of sobriety, actually, and so that the song was kind of like that kind of message within that is like we need to grow up. But it was through the guise of this relationship that I was in. That necessarily, well, I'm not going to sit here and say the person was bad for me and not bad for the person. It's just the idea of that we both had our own struggles and we need to grow up, And the idea was like as I was growing up and feeling like I've changed a lot just in this past year. The idea is I look back at the pain, I look back at the funk is what I called it. I needed it. You need to have those pains, those bad times because they're lessons, right? And so
Right.
the idea was if we ever going to love not each other, but just love, we need to grow up. And that's kind of the idea of that song.
Man, that's deep as shit, dude. That's a great answer. So a little bit of a curveball question here is, this mixtape is under 20 minutes. Do you feel for this project you said everything you wanted to say in that 20 minutes? I feel you did. Did you feel that you said the same thing that you wanted to say?
Within this confines of this particular tape, I 100% do. I also, in hindsight, I kind of like the shorter time. It's my first project. I want to give people a taste, a little sampler, and it's easier to digest in 20 minutes. Honestly, I obviously don't have that big of a following, and so I'm not going to try to expect everyone to sit there and listen to an hour-long drop if I did do that.
Right, we're not making Don over here.
Yeah, I don't have the staying power for a Donda level project, but no, I do feel like within the confines of this album, it did say everything that I wanted to say. I felt like there was a clear beginning, middle, and end, even if that small baked pace. I felt like I achieved what I wanted to say.
Wow. Okay, great answer, man. Great answer. Is there any specific artist who influenced when it comes to how you flowed on the song, the beats, just everything in general? Is there any specific artist?
So ironically, if I was gonna say kind of like my ideal artist is, I grew up a major Eminem fan. I was a gigantic Eminem fan. I was almost cringy level Eminem fan for a really long time, but I've broken off from that, and that actually kind of inspired more of this, I won't say more modern kind of sound, because I used to just be like, about that spit it and hit it and double, like that kind of like lyrical, spiritual miracle, to quote.
So kind of the Busta Rhymes thing that he was doing.
The Busta Rhymes, just that super fast paced, that super like 90s kind of 2000 hip hop, which I have love for. Absolutely one of my favorite kind of eras of hip hop. But so the Eminem is definitely a big part, and I feel like that could be shown in my kind of fast-paced rhyme scheme that I do utilize. The Weeknd is a big kind of inspiration. Ironically, Weeknd is biggest inspiration for, I'd say, the final track, that kind of synth wave kind of. Ironically, is the synth wave kind of 80s sound was something I was playing with. Well, I want to say 2018 is when I was kind of like messing around with it, and something I really liked. And then ironically, like he drops After Hours, and it's like, you know, that 80s synth sound vibe. And I was just there like, I love this album, but like, man, people are gonna think immediately that this is where I was biting that flow. And it was, if anything, I'm kind of happy because it kind of makes that sound more kind of mainstream. But yeah, so The Weeknd is a big influence. Eminem is a big influence. Kanye is a big influence for me, though ironically, I wouldn't say this album has any sort of resemblance towards that, except for the
Right.
fact that I play with uniquely different sounds. I find every song is kind of uniquely a different kind of, I won't say genre, but kind of like the outskirts of hip hop, if that, you know, like I'm Fucked is more like that early 2000 brutally honest, you know, telling a story. I'm confessing my sins kind of hip hop, where you get more like I Could Have Spent, which plays more of that kind of modern day, like I could have, you know, you have that kind of vibe going for it. So kind of, I'd say those two are my biggest kind of influences with this kind of album that I feel.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. One particular thing that I thought I related to your album a little bit was G Herbo's PTSD a little bit, because I think he opened up a little bit about struggles as well in that. Maybe not like a direct, you know, connection, but that's just something I kind of found a little bit. Not that I'm saying you sound like G Herbo or anything, for sure.
You don't have to worry. I'm glad you can even make that connection. The fact that you're even saying that I sound like an artist who is professional, who is has a higher standing, that's nothing but a compliment for me, right? This is something that's been a very big dream of me, to just put out music, and so that's just a big compliment. I'm glad you could relate it.
I appreciate that, man. If if you had the choice of any producer on the floor right now, one who was considered popular and one who you would consider underrated, who would you pick for a dream producer?
That's a good question. See, it's weird because a part of me, in terms of like hip hop, a part of me always, you know, who wouldn't want to work with Kanye as the producer? You know what I mean? Like just his kind of flow, but I wouldn't say he's underrated per se. A part of me wants to lean towards more like some like synth wavy kind of vibes, and like I think working with Daft Punk would be, you know, absolutely amazing. With the production they did on like even just like Starboy, or like even like Yeezus, they did a lot on Yeezus, right? Like just those kind of like weird unique sounds, because I like trying to capture unique sounds, something that is a challenge to me, like artistically in terms of writing and trying to get the flows off. So I'd say probably those people if I could. I wouldn't know if they're considered underrated, but maybe in the hip hop community.
Right. No, as far as the hip hop community, usually Daft Punk, when you say that, people more think like, you know, something like Pharrell's production and stuff like that they did. You know, Jesus is more like, I don't want to say it's obscure, because it definitely was still a popular album, even though he surprisingly dropped it. But yeah, I wouldn't say
Yeah.
people like the minute they talk more. I would say they even talk more about Starboy, if anything.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
funny to
you're gonna
say.
get. So yeah, I'd say them. Like ironically, one of the big pushes of music when I started working on Project Me and my buddy, we wrote to the Daft Punk Tron Legacy soundtrack, and like we wrote like a bunch of songs to like a bunch of that, and that kind of was like kind of helped capturing the sound. I don't know if it's not necessarily present on this album, but it's definitely kind of like that fast paced kind of vibe that I'm going for.
All right. If there is there anybody that you would like right now want to work with as far as a feature, like as an artist?
Oh, as an artist, I almost want to say Kanye again. Like I don't want to sound like too much like, yeah, Kanye, you know, but I just feel like he's one of those kind of artists that I find brings out some of the best out of his features. You know what I mean? Like, so one of the compliments people can say about Donna, some of those features are absolutely amazing. I find like he has that kind of style to him, and that's saying me being featured on his on one of his on one of his works, you know. But in terms of myself, I don't know. I'm trying to think. Like a part of me, like the kid in me, always wants to say Eminem because who wouldn't want to work with one of their heroes growing up? You know what I mean? But I almost say like the people like The Weeknd, even like Lil Baby or even like J Cole, one of those higher level profile rappers who I'd love to just try to see if I could even match them. You know, like that'd be such a fun challenge for me, like as a writer.
At this point, I'm just glad you didn't say Drake because yeah. After Certified Lover Boy, I think he's done. So
I like some of the Drake albums. What does he know about cameras?
but yeah, no, those are all good answers for sure. And I guess my final question for you is you kind of answered it at the beginning, but are there any singles, any albums that you're kind of working on right now that could come out in the future as of this moment?
So in terms of singles, I definitely have some singles working out. I have one kind of synthwave based hip hop album that is in the process of being made. It's basically almost all recorded. My roommate who I work with, who's actually in the studio right now, a homemade home studio. He's mixing it and engineering it and doing that. I don't know in the process that's being made. I have another one with the buddy who I recorded this with at the it's called Viva Recording Studios. It's in Ottawa. Check it out. Quick little plug there. But that's where I go. I'm actually going again tomorrow. We kind of have like a duo kind of thing where we get together in the studio and like he makes a beat in about an hour or so, and I write a song in about an hour or so, and we kind of just create music. So that's something that could be dropping out real soon. Singles. I have another one with my other buddy, kind of repping the UFO. It's kind of our collective group, right? And so we have kind of our own kind of I want to say bad meets evil kind of vibe, like both of us kind of a conceptual kind of duo album that I also have in the works, and I also have a little bit of something alone, another mixtape kind of that I'm working on. So I'm working a lot.
Well, that's good to hear, man, because I really do look forward to whatever you're gonna do next. Because honestly, you're a great artist. I hope you get some more attention this year because that project was pretty solid. And I mean, that's all I really have to say, man.
Well, thank you so much, man. That honestly, that means the world to me. Even just like I wanted you to see it because I see your posts and stuff like that. I know you're a big hip hop head, and so like I want people's opinions. Every time somebody messaged me saying like, "What was your like?" I love the album, Mikey. I was like, "What's your favorite song?" Like I'm interested to see what was people's vibing, what were they vibing, and stuff like that. Which actually brings me like, what was your favorite song, if you don't mind me asking?
It's really hard because I really like all of them, but if I had to pick two out of the six, Lessons is probably my second favorite, and Celebratory is probably my first favorite because I love the way it's sequenced in from the last song, and it's just really a banging song. But honestly, to be honest with you, I liked all of them, like all equally. I thought they were all great.
You gonna make me blush. You gonna make me blush.
And this is not me like, kissing your butt or anything. This is me being serious. Like I thought it was a great project. I even bought it for $6. I rarely ever buy. Oh, there we go. You cut out for a second. I ever rarely buy music anymore, and when I do, it has to be something special. So yeah, man, I thank you so much for coming here, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your honesty in my questions. It's really awesome.
No
And yeah,
problem, man. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your kind words. I know you're not trying to kiss my butt with the fact that you say you enjoy all the songs. That means the world. That's all I could ever ask for. So
so everyone out there, please go check out Mike's project. Most likely to drop a mixtape, streaming everywhere, right? You can buy it even and all that good stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
So
man.
thank you for
Please
coming
do.
on here,
Thank you so
man.
much.
I appreciate you
Thank
all.
you, man.
I'll see y'all later, folks.